Morning. The time is now 9:53 a.m. and a quorum of the board is present. State Board of Education meeting of June 11, 2024 is called to order. I'd like to begin by asking for a moment of silence as we recognize the sad and untimely passing of our department spokesperson, Bill DeCessa. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family during this time. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and order of priority. Are there any items that board members would like to add or delete from the agenda? Dr. Pritchett?
Thank you. I would like to add a resolution entitled State Board of Education Resolution in the Aftermath of Tragedies at Oxford High School and Michigan State University. I do not need to read this into the record right now for just a review, and board members have had an opportunity to take a look at it. It calls for a comprehensive review of events after the Oxford tragedy, request for continued and increased emphasis on children's mental health here in Michigan, and required training for suicide and threat assessment.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Tilley. Discussion. Dr. Pritchett, any discussion?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Snyder?
So I was hoping to actually revisit the Oxford Call to Action resolution that we presented in March and should have thoroughly debated then. We had the parents come in May to a board retreat, and there are edits to that original Oxford Call to Action resolution that the parents and emergency operation management professionals and experts took part in writing. So I'm going to vote yes.
We have a motion on the table. We have a second,
yes.
And we are discussing
Dr.
that
Rice,
motion.
I am speaking to the merits of this resolution and to the context of other resolutions that have been provided to this board. So I'll vote yes on that resolution to bring it to the board. I do hope that you'll allow me to then present the original with the edits after we've approved to amend the agenda and add it, so that both can be debated and discussed on its merits.
Thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, I find the resolution presented by Board Member Pritchett to be woefully deficient. However, in case this board doesn't want to debate Ms. Snyder's resolution, which I think is significantly better, I will support this one in the hopes that there will be good, robust discussion and amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any other board members? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, board. Ms. Snyder, a motion.
Yes, I move to amend the agenda to add to the agenda wherever we put this resolution, the Oxford Call to Action resolution that was presented in March and then discussed again at the retreat in May. I will.
Motion. You can discuss it in a minute. Let's get a second, please. Do we have a second? We have a second from Mr. McMillan. Ms. Snyder, to you for discussion.
Yes, I will read into record the 5 portions of the resolution that were edited according to the retreat in May. Whereas the Oxford, Michigan shooting on November 30th, 2021 at Oxford High School was a tragedy that could have been prevented if the best practices in threat assessment and emergency management noted below were followed. The second paragraph, in any circumstance where a student has been harmed as a result of a safety-related event or mass casualty has occurred, mandate that a full and independent investigation by a coordinated team of appropriate state and federal agencies that collaborate and coordinate with one another take place. In Oxford, a third-party investigation was not achieved by a governing body. The school district hired a lawyer that then hired a preferred firm to release a summary that did not effectively recall the wrongs of the event or the actions necessary to address next steps to ensure the events of Oxford do not happen again. Further, 2.5 years later, the Attorney General of the state of Michigan has not exercised her authority and initiated a third-party investigation. The following paragraph, reform governmental immunity. In all private and public sectors responsible for providing safety, individuals are accountable to the negligence thereof. School employees are no different. Without appropriate consequence for negligence, schools remain unmotivated to make the changes necessary to keep kids safe, and our judicial branch does not have the legal foundation to hold school employees accountable to their actions or inaction. School officials in Oxford were not only not held accountable for their negligence that resulted in the death of 4 students, they were transferred to other districts in Michigan without consequence, and the edit to present today is they remain employed. Under therefore be it resolved, the second paragraph, amend current EOP laws to mandate full and independent investigations that shall include a determination of the competency, compliance, and negligence of implementation of the adopted EOP, especially when an event has occurred where human casualty is the outcome. The last 2 paragraphs to add and edit to the resolution today. Create a school safety committee to investigate the Oxford shooting, allowed by the Constitution as a way for the legislature to govern in response to situations such as this. This would provide a platform to find out exactly what happened and for the details of the above recommended amendments to be publicly debated, discussed, and addressed, and where school officials can be subpoenaed to testify before the legislature's appointed committee in the event that the Attorney General will not initiate a third-party investigation. The State Board of Education has determined that the Michigan Department of Education should provide such a committee with a list of schools that have failed to develop, update, or implement EOPs according to federal mandate. Further, such a committee should investigate and report on Michigan's School Safety Task Force that was developed in 2018 and the measures that were followed through with or not in the Oxford shooting. Lastly, the committee would be able to engage parents of this state in improving safety in school, as they are not currently a stakeholder invited to the School Safety Task Force table, according to the published makeup of the body that deliberates and makes decisions. This would be an excellent space for community-based organizations like 42 Strong to communicate and engage the government on the importance of their school safety work. And lastly, the Michigan Department of Education should report to a legislature-appointed school safety committee on the actions taken on each of the 29 recommendations from the 2018 School Safety Task Force in light of the 2021 Oxford school shooting.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. It's been read, at least the amendments from the previous incarnation have been read into the record. Ms. Snyder, any additional comments?
So one of the things that was said repeatedly when I presented this resolution in March was that we needed to have time to bring everybody to the table and to ask questions. We did that during the retreat. I hope that you will be willing to say yes to it so that it can be debated publicly.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Snyder. Any other comments on this resolution? And this is not on the merits of the resolution so much as the vote on placement on the agenda in the afternoon for the resolution. Dr. Pugh.
I am going to be voting for this to not be placed on the agenda. I think that I know that the resolution that has been introduced by Board Member Pritchett, Dr. Pritchett, it gets at the items that are raised in this resolution as well, and in a more concise way and less words. And it also addresses the actions advocated by the parents. And I'm very grateful and thankful that we were able to hear from the parents of the victims of Oxford. And thank you, Dr. Rice, for arranging that post our last discussion on this item. So I will be voting no on this resolution. And that is because I believe that in a very concise way, we address the issues raised by the parents as well as those items raised in this resolution proposed by Board Member Snyder.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Mr. McMillan.
I would just have to comment that the resolution by Board Member Pritchett does not include items that are in this one, and that's why I think this one is important. Certainly doesn't talk about taking to task the Attorney General, who has been derelict for 2.5 years, Attorney General Nessel, and refusing the parents' plea to have an investigation where there can be subpoena power It doesn't talk about the legislature like this one does that can appoint a committee with subpoena power, which has been done in the past, over matters that were much less, were just financial matters as opposed to investigating murders. The resolution by Board Member Pritchett does not talk about anything about revising immunity, governmental immunity, which the parents have become increasingly frustrated because special interests, union bosses are muzzling muzzling teachers and others from allowing the truth about what happened to come out. And so this is a lot more robust, a lot more significant, and actually gets to the real issues that need to be dealt with, that would actually get truth out and help prevent these kind of casualties from happening across the state in the future. That's why I'll be voting yes, and I encourage other members to as well.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Dr. Pugh?
I know that we'll get to this later this afternoon, but I believe we should listen to the voice of parents, and that is what the Oxford parents asked for, and versus jumping to our own actions that we want to take, and political as they are. And so I do believe that I heard the Oxford parents very clearly say that they wanted a comprehensive and independent review that then allows the parents to outline what they want their actions to be. And so again, I'll be voting no, and thank you, Dr. Pritchett, for the resolution that you provided for us to address the concerns and actions requested by the parents of Oxford.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Ms. Snyder, you get the benediction.
To be very clear, Oxford parents were abundantly clear during our retreat of what they were requesting. An independent investigation by the Attorney General should have already happened. They shouldn't even have to request it in a retreat. The fact that they do have to request that is already being asleep at the wheel from a leadership perspective. But they also very specifically asked for systemic and administrative accountability. They are tired of seeing this conversation, to your point, be turned politically towards things like the Second Amendment and being misconstrued and conflated with other issues and events. We have the ability at this board, right here, right now, to add a resolution to the table that very specifically addresses what these parents have come to the table and asked us to address multiple times. And so, you know, whether we do or do not add it to the agenda, we will not be getting away from or running away from the things that they are specifically asking for over time. The conversation will not die. It will stay alive.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
No.
Lipton?
No.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
No.
Pugh?
No.
Robinson?
No.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
No.
Motion fails.
Ms. Tilly, I believe you have a motion on Juneteenth?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to move it?
Yes, I have, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have
We'll
the title.
distribute the Juneteenth motion. Would you like to move it while it's being distributed?
Yes, I have a resolution to observe and commemorate Juneteenth.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second by Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Tilly, to you to sum up the resolution.
So it is to commemorate Juneteenth. Juneteenth became a holiday officially, and it is to give the history of Juneteenth and to acknowledge everything that happened historically.
Okay, very, very good. So we have a motion. We have a second. We have a summary of the resolution. Ms. Justice is finishing the distribution thereof. Any other discussion associated therewith? This is not a motion on the merits. It's a motion to include it on the agenda. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. Ms. Tilley, to you, I believe you have another motion associated with an advanced placement course in African American Studies.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a resolution for African American AP as a course. And it, of course, we're not mandating it as a course, but we are definitely giving merit to the fact that it's a needed course, as we have African American, as we have AP classes in different schools, and different programs are available. We are suggesting and encouraging schools to also make African American AP available.
We have a motion to offer advanced placement African American Studies, moved by Ms. Tilley, seconded by Dr. Pugh. Any other discussion, Ms. Tilley?
No.
Any other discussion by members of the board? This is a vote not on the merits of, this is a vote on whether to place it on the agenda for discussion in the afternoon. Hearing none, a roll call vote. Ms. Evans?
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And Ms. Tilley, I believe you have a third motion associated with gun violence awareness and education.
Yes.
Would you like to move that at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on gun violence awareness and education. Do we have a second associated therewith? The second from Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Tilley, back to you to describe the resolution.
So wanted to do a resolution that focuses overall on gun violence in our schools and communities and its impacts on different communities. We have a real issue with gun violence, people losing their lives, whether it is murder, whether it is suicide, and even accidental deaths with guns. So wanted to do a resolution for that.
We have a motion, we have a second, we've had a summary shared. Any other discussion associated with the placement of this resolution on the agenda? Not the merits thereof, but the placement on the agenda. Mr. McMillan.
While I have some concerns about some of the wording, I don't mind talking about this subject. People, conservatives, others have been very supportive of gun safety classes, as a matter of fact, and in the past, and so I'm fine with discussing it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McMillan. Anyone else for the good of the group? Hearing and seeing none, Ms. Evans, a roll call vote.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh? Yes. Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ms. Tilley, it's my understanding that you have a fourth resolution supporting the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Would you like to move it at this time?
Yes.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second associated therewith? Is there a second associated with the resolution? Hearing and seeing none, we move to the fifth and final resolution. Ms. Tilley, I believe you have a resolution associated with ethnic studies. Would you like to move that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the importance of the creation of ethnic studies courses. Do we have a second associated therewith? Second associated therewith. Hearing none, if we could please take if I could have a motion on the agenda as amended with the 4 added resolutions. It is a motion to pass the amended agenda by Senator Bullock. Do we have a second by Dr. Robinson? Is there any discussion on the vote for the amended agenda? Hearing none, if we could do a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
No.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Board, it is 10:12, and we have an agenda. At this time, Ms. Liz Evans, State Board Executive, will introduce members of the State Board of Education.
Good morning. You have just been listening to Dr. Michael Rice, Chairperson of the State Board and State Superintendent. To his left around the table, we have Board President Dr. Pamela Pugh from Saginaw, Board Co-Vice President Ms. Ellen Cogan-Lipton from Huntington Woods, NASB Delegate Dr. Mitchell Robinson from Okemos, Ms. Nikki Snyder from Goodrich, and Ms. Candace Jackson, the Michigan Teacher of the Year. Back to the table to my right are Mr. Tom McMillan from Oakland Township, Board Treasurer Mr. Marshall Bullock from Detroit, Board Co-Vice President Ms. Tiffany Tilley from West Bloomfield, and Board Secretary Dr. Judith Pritchett from Washington Township. Virtually, we have joining us Ms. Stephanie O'Day, the Governor's K-12 Policy Advisor ex officio.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Public may register to provide comment during the public participation portion of the meeting at approximately 1 p.m. Those wishing to make public comment must register before 1 p.m. To provide public comment by telephone, please complete the registration form on the MDE webpage at www.michigan.gov/MDE. To provide public comment in person, please complete a green public comment form when you arrive here at the meeting location. These instructions are listed on the MDE webpage at www.michigan.gov/MDE. For the first item on today's agenda at 10:14, for the Committee of the Whole meeting is the presentation on Goal 5, supporting students to and through graduation with the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, otherwise known as EWIMS. A presentation scheduled during the June 11, 2024 State Board of Education meeting will focus on Goal 5 of the state's top 10 strategic education plan to increase our graduation rates. It will focus on EWIMS and the department's graduation rate increase guidance documents. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Delsa Chapman, Deputy Superintendent of the Division of Assessment, School Improvement, and Systems Support. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to the new division names. Dr. Corinne Edwards, Director of the Office of Educational Supports, and Ms. Cheryl Bailey, Educational Consultant in the Office of Educational Supports. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Good morning, presenters.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and good morning, Board. We come before you today with an intentional effort and sharing on supporting students to and through graduation with the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, or EWIMS. Before hearing from team members Dr. Corinne Edwards and Cheryl Bailey, I will share an overview of our time together and a reiteration of recent success specific to our graduation rate as reported earlier this year in March of 2024. As a reminder, Michigan's Top 10 Strategic Education Plan Goal 5 focuses on increasing the percentage of all students who graduate from high school. Our goal in that regard today is to share our graduation rate summary, our graduation rate increase guidance documents that have been published and distributed to the field, along with a planned additional publication, and finally, our intentional effort via the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System. Here we see that we have graduation rates that occurred over the last year. Specifically, we would like to highlight that our 4-year and 5-year graduation rates, cohort rates, with a slight increase for what should be and is noted here, our 6-year cohort rate, which is specifically attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. We highlight and reemphasize today that 13 of 17 categories of students had 4-year graduation rates in 2023 that were higher than in 2019 pre-pandemic. Dr. Edwards and Ms. Bailey will share specifics on how EWIMS has proven to be an effective strategy for targeting efforts towards increasing graduation rates overall, and specifically for the categories that should be highlighted on the screen, and somehow these slides are inverted. So I want to go here, then I'll come back. Sorry, I'm not sure how that happened. So here are the 13 of 17 categories of the students that had four-year graduation rates in 2023 that were higher in 2019 pre-pandemic. And now, our graduation summary. As previously shared during our overall Goal 5 presentation in March of 2024, we have experienced rising graduation rates 10 of the last 12 years. When we compare 2022 and 2023, it is expressly noted that 17 of 17 categories increased, 13 of which, as we saw on the previous slide, were higher than pre-pandemic rates. Yes, there are sizable differences in certain groups, which will require our continuous effort as the state education agency, but it will also require attention by local and intermediate school districts along with our state legislature. Again, today we will share a specific effort for MDE in this regards through EWIMS. Before sharing those specifics on EWIMS, we would like to highlight our effort to provide guidance to the field regarding graduation rates. We successfully published and released in November of 2022 guidance that was intentionally aimed at grades 9 through 12. The high school edition of the graduation rate increase guidance focused on the following four elements: absenteeism intervention, academic enrichment and tutorial support, extracurricular engagement, and mentoring. With a backwards design planning approach to this effort of providing support to the field, the follow-up iteration of the MDE composed graduation rate increase guidance was specific to supporting students in grades 6 through 8 as noted here, entitled Supporting Students to and Through Graduation, Engaging Students for Successful Middle Years. This was successfully released to the field in February of 2024. Noted in its title, and we would like to emphasize here for this particular publication, a key element for this population of learners in grades 6 through 8 is engagement in the learning process. As such, the focus points prescribed for this edition through research and contributions by content experts of the department based on their contact and interaction and work with the field include strategies to promote attendance, personalized learning and enrichment in those environments, out of school time opportunities, and mentoring. Looking ahead, while providing consistency in supporting our LEAs, fall of 2024 will render a memo to the field reminding LEAs of the current high school and middle years guidance documents, along with a planned release of the third graduation rate increase document for elementary years, including grades pre-K through 5, with a proposed focus on school climate and culture, school connectedness, and being able to cause early or collect early a root cause analysis. We appreciate the opportunity to update you on the early warning intervention and monitoring system as we share our efforts. I now will turn it over to Dr. Edwards to move us forward in today's presentation. Dr. Edwards.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, and good morning. The EWIMS, or Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, is an evidence-based, data-driven decision-making process that can be leveraged as part of a district's multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, framework. Within the process, schools use a continuum of tiered supports for its students, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, each with demonstrated evidence of effectiveness. At Tier 1, schools implement evidence-based practices to support attendance, positive social, emotional, and behavioral well-being, and high course performance for all learners. EWIMS also helps educators systematically identify students who are showing signs that they are at risk of dropping out of school. EWIMS examines the underlying causes of risk, matches student needs to intervention, and monitors student progress and success of the interventions. Fundamentally, EWIMS is an ongoing cycle of examining data and making decisions about supports and interventions to help students get back on track for graduation. The 7 steps for EWIMS implementation are: Step 1, establish roles and responsibilities. Schools establish a team to work and to lead and carry out the EWIMS process, to determine the frequency and duration of meetings, and to develop a shared vision for the team's work. Step 2, the team uses an early warning systems tool. The EWIMS team uses the tool of their choice to update lists of available interventions and strategies to support students and run automated and customized reports. Step 3, review the early warning system data. The EWIMS team then focuses on student, school, and district level data assessment and analysis. Step 4, interpret the early warning system data. The EWIMS team seeks out additional data besides the indicators to better understand the needs of individual students or groups of students. This step focuses on the underlying or root causes that might lead students to be identified as at risk on one or more indicators. Step 5, assign and provide interventions. The EWIMS team members make decisions about assigning individual students or groups of students to specific interventions in the school, the district, and the community. Step 6, monitoring student progress. The EWIMS team examines the student risk indicators on an ongoing basis to monitor the progress of students who have already been assigned to interventions. If students continue to be identified as off track, the team may consider assigning them to different interventions. If some students are no longer at risk, the team may consider ramping down services. And then step 7, evaluate and refine the EWIMS process. EWIMS team members revise specific strategies or their general approach as needed and determine how best to allocate resources to support students at risk. The National High School Center at the American Institute for Research, or AIR, developed the EWIMS 7-step process. The center wanted to help educators move from examining data for identification purposes to creating and implementing research-based action steps. Researchers at the Johns Hopkins University Everyone Graduates Center found that as early as 6th grade, low attendance and poor grades can help predict who later drops out of high school. Longitudinal studies conducted by the researchers over an extended period have consistently shown that barriers related to attendance, behavior, and course performance are the most influential factors in high school dropout rates. These indicators, when present as early as 6th grade, significantly reduce the likelihood of students dropping out. In 2017, the Regional Education Lab Midwest released a rigorous impact study that determined EWIMS is a promising, evidence-based strategy for getting students back on track for graduation. In the study, 73 schools were randomly assigned to use or not use EWIMS during the 2014-2015 school year. After 1 year of implementation, schools using EWIMS reduced the percentage of students with chronic absences and course failures. The National Dropout Center recognizes EWIMS on its website as a model dropout prevention program with strong evidence of effectiveness. This slide provides the hyperlink to the model program's database. As mentioned earlier, EWIMS is leveraged within a secondary multi-tier systems of support or MTSS framework. During training, EWIMS trainer coaches help school participants or school team participants identify where each EWIMS step aligns with one or more of the school's MTSS essential components. And now I'll turn it over to Ms. Burchelle Bailey, who is our MDE education consultant and EWIMS lead.
Good morning. MDE, in collaboration with the American Institutes for Research, develop universal resources that can help build capacity for EWIMS exploration and implementation. On the MDE webpage, districts can find videos, PowerPoints, a facilitator guide to accompany the videos, an implementation guide, and a link to self-paced EduPath courses for each step of the EWIMS process. We are currently collecting data to identify which districts in the state may have accessed these resources and say they are implementing EWIMS. This will allow us to look more closely at those districts' graduation trend data and the fidelity of implementing the EWIMS process. The MDE EWIMS core team includes representatives from the Office of Educational Supports, the Office of Partnership Districts, the Office of Health and Nutrition Services, and the Office of Special Education. The core team develops and oversees a network that supports the implementation of EWIMS. And the network includes lead trainers who develop training curricula and materials to train cohorts of state-certified trainer coaches. State-certified trainer coaches are available to provide training and coaching to schools and districts around the state. And district facilitators are staff who have attended EWIMS awareness training and may support the implementation within their districts. In addition to the universal resources that districts can access and use independently, MDE provides targeted and intensive support. Currently, we have 10 EWIMS state trainer coaches working with 22 comprehensive support and improvement or CSI schools, 7 targeted support and improvement or TSI schools, and 1 additional targeted support or ATS school. Our EWIMS trainer coaches must complete 16 hours of training, pass or check for understanding assessment, demonstrate proficiency by presenting the training content to the MDE EWIMS core team, and participate in feedback sessions. To ensure the capacity to implement EWIMS, 3 times yearly, the MDE core team and lead trainers provide free professional learning. These sessions are open to over 350 people who have attended the EWIMS initial 8 hours of awareness training. Trainer coaches are provided with implementation science training and ongoing coaching. Implementation science training provides frameworks to guide the creation of conditions and activities that facilitate the use of evidence-based practices. The EWIMS core team and lead trainers provide a mandatory all-day professional learning workshop for EWIMS state trainer coaches. And once or twice a year, 8 hours of virtual EWIMS awareness training is provided for any districts who want training beyond the resources available on the MDE webpage. EWIMS trainer coaches will continue to provide implementation support to identified schools and monitor their progress. We plan to increase support by training additional EWIMS state trainer coaches. We are also working with an intermediate school district to develop a model where ISDs and state trainer coaches work collaboratively to support schools and districts. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Again, Dr. Rice and board, we appreciate the opportunity to update you on our graduation data trends and the associated efforts that lend to the increase of those rates. We are happy to entertain any questions and clarify any items, elements, or points presented to you today. Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, Dr. Edwards, Ms. Bailey. We appreciate the presentation. Board, you may recall that when we heard a presentation in March about increased graduation rates, that you requested a presentation specifically on EWIMS. This is in response to your request. We believe that this is an important tool, and it's a growing tool in the state of Michigan. It's not mandatory. That's not how we roll as a local control state, but it is increasingly viewed as an important tool for helping us drive graduation rates. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't mention to the board that 10 of 12 years in a row, graduation rates up, 17 of 17 categories up, as you pointed out, Dr. Chapman. We recently had a piece of research come out in the media that didn't really underscore the fact that the research was on dated data. And it was referencing graduation rates that were 2 years old, actually almost 3 years old. But in the last 2 years, as well as 10 of the last 12 years, graduation rates have increased in the state of Michigan. Thank you very much, presenters. Board members, questions or comments? Ms. Lipton.
I think this is really very, very positive news. I mean, it's always great when we can collect data, look at it, and actually see positive changes. I mean, these graduation numbers, I think, are very, very encouraging. And then in terms of the actual summary, so I think this is really something that is, it's a really, it's really a very, very positive story. And so thank you for that. On slide number 8, the MDE guide titled Supporting Students to and Through Graduation, Engaging Students for Successful Middle Years. I think that's really wonderful. I mean, a lot of the work that I do in terms of college access and success, we're seeing that, you know, oftentimes when we get students in high school, they'll say, why didn't we know these things in middle school? Why didn't we know what we needed to do to be successful that far ahead? So I think, you know, looking at the middle years, I mean, obviously, yes, looking at the high schools is important, but middle years too, I think is really, really wonderful. My question is, that particular guide, that's made available, in other words, who's actually looking at that? Is it in the hands of the parents? Is it to get into the hands of superintendents, principals, teachers? So that I think the guidance is great. Who actually is physically getting their hands on it to get that
That's a
information?
great question. The guide is provided to the field, meaning that it is, yes, it is distributed all the way up to the superintendent, and once it hits at the district level, we would encourage district level staff to make sure that it is then provided directly to school level leaders and their leadership teams, and incorporate that into information that would be shared with the overall or general school community.
Okay, so we're looking to the superintendents to sort of disseminate it to their particular school district. Okay,
Share it and make
excellent.
it, to share it and make it available, but it also sits on our website as well, so anyone has access.
Excellent, okay, wonderful. And just could you clarify, so there's a lot of talk in terms of, at least in the higher ed success movement, about mentoring. And we're really looking at peer-to-peer mentoring, which I think is particularly helpful when you're dealing with older students. But there's, in my experience, there's a lot of, the idea of mentoring is a very, very broad umbrella. So when you talk about mentoring for your graduation rate increase, could you just give me a little bit more information? Are you talking about, teacher-student mentoring, community, volunteer mentoring? Are the mentors, is there a recommendation that mentors should be trained so that people just think, oh yeah, I'm going to help a student, but sometimes, we have to guide them in terms of how. So sort of like the big brother, big sister model. Like, could you give me a little bit more insight into what is suggested as to mentoring? Because I think mentoring is important, but I think it also has to have some parameters.
Thank you, and you answered many of the questions that you just posed to us. And so we don't have a specific model that we have been promoting with our LEAs, but we have been promoting by way of written communication to the field, recommendations that mentoring is consistent, that it is done through a very strategic process or match process, if you will, and we are encouraging that it would be individuals in the school community that the student is acclimated to or knows that they have connected it to the schools. And yes, we are strongly encouraging that there is training, and so that it is a very structured and regimented process. We do give the autonomy to the LEAs to determine what's a best fit scenario in implementing that for their school, but there are some definite expectations or recommendations, I'll say, based on the research that we were able to conduct here at the department before providing that written recommendation and communication to the field.
That's fabulous. I wonder if, in getting this information, these guides out to an individual's community, it would be wonderful if that information in terms of mentorship could be made to a community at large, in terms of, business community, um, you know, sort of local businesses that are around a school district. I think a lot of times, some of some of like the business community or faith-based organizations sometimes feel like they would like to be involved in a school community, but they don't know how. And I think that these types of strategic, high quality, well aligned mentorship opportunities can be a really great way for some of these community members, whether they're small businesses, whether they are faith based organizations, to really build community in a school district, because I think everyone is going to win when that happens. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And if there is some way to get this information out to those local communities via the superintendent, even better. Let's see. I think you've answered that question. Okay, so on slide number 11, when you drill down into the what is EWIMS, I really appreciate that. So the question I have is, so data is inputted into this particular system, and then certain information is then received. Is it done like student by student, or is it really based on, is sort of the on-ramp to EWIMS through a student that's already showing signs of trouble, through, I'm guessing, attendance or something like that? Or is this something that even a student with perfect attendance would have sort of an EWIMS?
So we encourage districts to use a data tool that would look at all students, and it identifies at the district level as well as the school level as well as the classroom level and individual student level, whether they're having issues with the research-based indicators of attendance, behavior, and course performance. So we look at all students, and then we identify which students may need additional support.
And would it also be for a student that is, I mean, in other words, I assume that it's really intended to target students who are at risk of dropping out. But it potentially could also be used for a student that might need additional coursework to sort of keep them, like maybe a very highly gifted student that is maybe acting out behaviorally because they're bored and they might need to do an early middle college program or something like that. So it's looking at attendance, course performance, and behavior.
Yes, but you're
For the student.
absolutely correct
Okay.
that it could be, part of the process is to do a root cause analysis. So there may be a behavior issue going on, but as you indicated, it could be because the student's bored and maybe they need additional academics. And so the root cause analysis piece is really important as part of this process because we have to identify why the student is having attendance, behavior, or course performance issues.
Now, you mentioned that, oh, and could it also be used for sort of an early, and it starts as early as you said the, the middle years, okay? But could it also be used for early warning signs, I assume, of maybe some early signs of a mental health crisis or a student that is perhaps i- moving toward a mental health crisis?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, this is really, I mean, I think this is really, it's really, really, really wonderful, positive. I guess my question is, why might a district not use it? I mean, I know, it seems to me that you would want, this kind of program. So what would be the impediments? Why would a district say, I'm not going to use this? I mean, I know it's permissive, but why might they say, I don't want it, or I'm not going to use it? Or are there things that I'm missing? Is there a cost associated with it? Is it?
There's no cost associated with it specific. It is a process. And so it is just time and effort. It's not that a district would say they don't want to use it. It's a matter of a district figuring how this system can work into what they're doing, particularly at their secondary level, to address those student needs. As we were saying, it does embed itself into a multi-tiered system of support. So as districts are looking across their system to determine how they can best meet the needs of all kids, this is one of those aspects that a district may choose to, particularly in that secondary space, where we don't have a lot of known interventions to really address that level of student and some of the particular issues that they may be running into as an early warner. So it's not that they would say, we don't want to use it. It's just a matter of them being able to look at it and say, how does this fit within the system of what we're doing?
I see. So they may just be happy with what they're already doing.
They may be, if it's
and just
addressing.
not necessarily need to change when things are already going as planned. Okay. So on slide number 19, you talk about that you've contracted with 10 EWIMS trainer coaches. And then, yes, you are looking to onboard additional. What is the number that you want to get to? I mean, 10 for 800 some odd school districts seems like not that many. I mean, I could be wrong, but that seems like a pretty high caseload. I know that not every district is using it, but perhaps over time, the idea is that more and more districts will use this, I presume.
That would be the hope. We are monitoring that data to see what would be the best practice for coach to district ratio, I guess, if you will. And as we begin to onboard and get the word out and really begin to get more interest at district level, then we can look at what our capacity would be to increase that level of support.
Okay, so right at this point, you don't yet know, we'd like to get to 50 trainers, or we think we'd like to get to half of our school districts using it, or something like that. You're still developing what
Right, we
those
still want to make sure we're looking at our
guides are.
data and what's best, what would be a best fit for coach to district? How many districts can a coach really take on with fidelity and really provide that level of increased technical assistance and support around the implementation factors?
Do you have any just back of the napkin, if I said to you, there's no impediments, what would you like to see? 10% of the school districts in 5 years, 100% of the school districts in 10 years? I mean, just if you could dream for a moment.
I've never had a wish list.
So again, I believe that as Dr. Edwards just shared, there are some districts that have developed over time something very similar to EWIM, so they may not see the need to adopt this. So if we were to, we don't have right now a projection, but that's something we would definitely look into based on the data that Ms. Bailey and the districts that she works with is providing. And then we could probably give an indication of, through a wish list, what we would like to, how we would like to see it grow.
Well, I think that, you're doing great work, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other questions or comments by board members?
She covered it all.
I would just say, before she covered it all, I was thinking, if I may.
Please.
And you did. They were really good and pointed questions. And along the same lines, I was thinking about community centers, because I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of community center leaders and their thoughts and concerns around education and how a tool like this could be helpful. And they have lots of input on what's going on around that whole family unit in these communities that prevent us from, those numbers from going in the right direction faster. And they have definitely been pulling on me and bringing up concerns that they have, that they're seeing, sometimes even before or in a way that those within the school system don't see, because they're being called upon for really heavy issues that maybe some of us, and I shouldn't say this because educators, I think, kind of know what's going on, but these community centers are right there in the community and they're feeling it firsthand. So any way that we can make sure that these tools are getting to those entities, but also that schools are tapping into that data that these entities provide. Thank you.
Those are tricky conversations, given FERPA.
Yeah.
I know,
But it's one thing, look, I mean, Michael's at Edison Environmental Science Academy as a student during the day, and then he travels 200 feet to the Boys and Girls Club in the afternoon. The Boys and Girls Club is well aware of what's up with Michael. And whether they have all the data or not, they're well aware of what's going on with Michael and Michael's challenges, and. So there can be a sharing without a violation of FERPA.
Right. Because I'm thinking of from the community center because the stories I'm hearing is in the dead winter, children are showing up in flip-flops with T-shirts on, asking for a coat. And so I would imagine what that looks like in the morning at 5 a.m. waiting for a bus to come and pick them up, or not, because they're just not going to do it. So the data doesn't have to go from the school to the community center. The community center has lots of data that they're seeing.
And in some cases, the data walks in.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's not necessarily
That's what I
numeric.
mean.
It's empirical data.
You don't have to do another or pay for another assessment. They have data.
I think the community groups or organizations, as well as the mentoring thing. So mentoring is a commitment, right?
Yeah.
And everybody thinks just because I talk to some young people, they're mentoring.
Right.
Mentoring is a structured, regimented commitment that requires a specific time, and whether it's once a month, every 2 weeks, you got to go see, check in, and follow some type of agenda program. But then the community groups are talking, they want to talk to the schools, don't know necessarily how, but the school can't give information. So there's this so the groups, what they do is create their own program, not understanding things.
Absolutely.
And so then they also are overlapping and doing things redundantly that don't need to be done. And so those resources are kind of wasted. And that's where we got to figure out how to mesh it, and so that they can communicate. So.
And I do think.
And she made a comment about me being bored at school. I'm a A3 student, so y'all understand what that is. I got an A, but a 3 was my citizenship because I was born.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
There were probably others like you in school. I know one who grew up in Ohio. Ms. Snyder, to you. Thank you, Senator.
So Ellen mentioned something, I think very applicable to some of the several conversations we've had at this table about where EWIMS would be helpful. It would be used to identify mental health crises where I'm assuming that the student could be, a harm to themselves or others. So could you walk us through what it would look like to use an early intervention tool or a warning tool and evaluation, and what steps could be taken if say, promoting attendance actually isn't the best option for that student?
I want to make sure I'm can you say that one more time?
Well, I guess let me just ask a question. Is it possible that promoting attendance for a student that might be facing a mental health crisis is not the best option for them?
Oh, I see.
And then therefore, how would EWIMS be used
In the process,
to
though,
evaluate and intervene?
yeah, in the process, I believe I'm understanding what you're saying. And I would answer, and certainly Ms. Bailey can chime in, but in the process, the goal of the process is to identify what is the best need for the student. So as you're saying, if attendance is a behavior, is a barrier for me, or is presenting itself as a barrier for me, but my attendance, I'm believing that I hear you say that there may be some issues with me attending, and we don't want to promote that student attending?
I'm asking very specifically, in the event that EWIMS identifies a looming mental health crisis,
Okay.
where a student is at risk to themselves or others,
Oh, I see.
how would
Okay.
EWIMS be used to identify that and intervene?
That would be around behavior, but
Yeah, during the root cause analysis, which is step 4 of the process, once that mental health issue is identified, the team would need to work with mental health professionals, et cetera, to determine what would be the best intervention or strategy to address the needs of the student. And as you indicated, if attending school is part of the problem of creating that mental health crisis, then they would need to come up with a plan on how to provide education for that student. Maybe it's a virtual learning. I had a situation in a district where we had an alternative school, and a student had school phobia, and she just could not go into the general comprehensive school, but she was able to thrive in a smaller setting. So it's up to the district and the team to identify what's the best intervention for that student.
Are there any laws that govern how this would play out in a situation where the student may be a risk to themselves or others?
From a counseling perspective, if there was, through the identification of the student having the mental health issues, then that's where the team within that school could sit down and really speak to what is the need of the child. How do we support? How do we reach out within the context of what our responsibilities are as staff members in a school environment? What are our legal obligations? But more importantly, how do we provide the necessary supports and services to the student? So I don't think there's a general response to that, as much as it is that the caregivers in that particular school would need to look at that specific need of that child, and how do we best walk with that child to make sure that he or she gets what she or he needs to be successful, and who do we need to work with to ensure that that happens within the safety and well-being of not only the student, but those that are in that school facility as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Lipton?
So just to basically agree with that, and just to put a little more further meat on the bones, a school district cannot ever order a child into mental health treatment if they're at risk to themselves or risk of harming others, but they can make a referral to, depending on the age of the child, to a juvenile judge. And then the juvenile judge can make a determination under Michigan law if a short-term inpatient placement is needed. And a parent of a child under the age of 18 can always go to a juvenile court, but a school district under Michigan law doesn't have the authority to obviously send a child into treatment, but we do have mechanisms under our juvenile probate code for a judge to make that determination, as long as due process is followed.
And that really is the sweet spot of EWIMS, really that early warning, right? Getting a team to really say to the child, I see you, and speak specifically to what that need is and develop that service. How do we wrap around? How do we involve the community, as mentioned, if that is the best case? How do we involve parents? How do we involve caregivers? Is there a person in the school? How do we create a system of support for this young person so that they can realize their dreams?
And the connection with individual children is individuals.
Right.
So I remember a girl in 5th grade, a woman who, reflecting back about herself in 5th grade, said, I remember how that teacher's smile made me feel every time I walked into school. She went to school to see that person because that person at that moment was her rock, her foundation. Now, you know, how you bottle that is a question. But that's a thing is incontrovertible. That's real. Anything more for the good of the group board? Businesses and faith-based institutions are terrific partners around mentoring, without a doubt. Terrific partnering around mentoring. With 500 mentors for 1,400 student mentees in my old district. Many of them came from faith-based institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques. What compelled them was their religion. That's not what they did when they got into our schools. But what compelled them was service out in a broader world. And business community has tremendous relationships with big brothers, big sisters. Bigs in business is increasingly a thing, but it must be consistent. Kids who don't experience consistency in other areas of their lives need consistency with the mentoring. Presenters, we appreciate you. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much. EWIMS, a rising best practice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Board, it's 11 a.m. We'll now be entering into the regular meeting of the State Board of Education. We will open the regular meeting with a presentation on the approval of the proposed standards for the preparation of school librarians. The proposed standards for the preparation of school librarians are associated with Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan goals 2 and 7. These standards, which are being presented to you today, would replace Michigan's current standards for the preparation of teachers of library media, adopted by the State Board of Education on March 13th, 2012. This effort to update the standards was initiated by the 2019 publication of the new National School Librarian Preparation Standards by the American Association for School Librarians, to which Michigan's preparation standards in this area have been historically aligned. Upon adoption, these updated standards would inform program development and continuous improvement efforts of Michigan's educator preparation providers. Michigan Association of School Librarians, with consultation and guidance from the Office of Educator Excellence, convened a stakeholder committee representing pre-K through 12 school librarians, teachers, administrators, and university-based school librarian educators to review and revise Michigan's current preparation standards in this area. You will hear about the recommendation in just a moment. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent of the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law. I'll say that quickly 5 times in a row. Dr. Sean Kotke, Manager in the Office of Educator Excellence, and Dr. Alam Bazi, Education Consultant, MDE Office of Educator Excellence, the Educator Preparation Unit. Following the presentation, the board will be asked to approve the proposed standards for the preparation of school librarians as presented in the Superintendent's Memorandum dated June 3rd, 2024. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Thank you, Board. Since you did such a thorough job of introducing what we're going to do today, I'm going to strictly hand it right over to Dr. Sean Kotke.
Great, thank you, and good morning. It's a pleasure to return to you with this set of standards after its public comment. We start with why the standards for school librarians, the preparation standards for school librarians. Currently, the Michigan Department of Education standards for the preparation of school librarians, and they're actually called Teachers of Library Media in that set of standards. They were adopted in 2012, implemented in 13, and they're aligned to 2010 American Association of School Librarian standards. Since that time, AASL has updated its standards, and so we are bringing this forward to keep alignment with current national standards. This work also fits in very well with our overall efforts to increase systems of literacy instruction in schools. We've previously brought to you standards for PK3 teachers, grades 3-6 teachers, grades 5-9, grades 7-12, and disciplinary literacy standards to support whole school approaches to children's literacy achievement. And the school librarian plays a vital role in that, particularly in the realm of digital literacy and ensuring equity of access to instructional materials and other sources. This supports two goals, primarily of the Top 10 Strategic Education Plan to improve early literacy achievement and to increase the number of certified teachers in areas of shortage, and we would say there is a shortage of school librarians. Turn it over now to my colleague, Dr. Bazzi.
Thank you, Dr. Kotke. So looking at who participated in the standards revision process, 19 stakeholders and reviewers who directly contributed to the standards revision process included school librarians, library media instructional leaders, professional organizations for education, leadership and members of the Michigan Association of School Librarians, educated preparation faculty, pre-K-12 teachers, and school administrators, as well as national leaders in library science education, representing the American Association of School Librarians, AASL, which I will use in upcoming slides to refer to the organization. Key shifts between the 2012 standards and standards that are proposed today are a focus on application of knowledge as well as generation of it. Reading development continues to be essential with additional modalities through digital literacy and instructional technologies. Ultimately, these standards embrace the broader vision of school librarians' multiplicity of roles as a teacher, leader, collaborator, and program administrators. School librarians are uniquely prepared to support teacher and students in information science literacy skills. Information science is the study of how information is created, organized, managed, stored, retrieved, and used. The public comment period that came after they were presented to the board during the period between January 10th and March 10th. During that period, 69 individuals across the state completed the survey. These represented, within these responses, 26 counties were represented, 31 school districts, 14 colleges, universities, and 12 professional education organizations.
You can see we have an expansive map because there was somebody in Columbus, Ohio, who offered their comment on it. So we wanted to represent them and include them.
Thank you. The respondents by their primary roles. For this survey item, respondents are able to select multiple roles they identify as. You'll notice the top two primary roles the respondents identified as are school librarians and parents and guardians, followed by classroom teachers and other higher education roles. Notice the remaining identified roles reflect broad representation across the ecosystem. Respondents are asked to indicate their position on the proposed school librarian preparation standards. Note the level of support and support with minor revisions is 76%. The minor revisions recommendations cited rationale. In collaboration with members of the original committee, the respondents' rationale for suggested changes were merited and resulted in 2 language edits. The 6 respondents who would support with significant revisions did not provide suggestions for changes or edits to the standards. A representative comment from this group was that the standards were too wordy, complicated, and the language was too academic. Of the 8 respondents who opposed the proposed standards, 3 presented statements that are not associated with preparation standards. And again, there were no suggestions for changes or edits. Respondents are asked about the extent that they felt the proposed standards support achievement of Michigan's academic standards for K-12 learners. 82% selected mostly or very well, 6% selected partially, and 12% selected not at all. In response to the questions about the proposed standards, alignment with the 2019 AASL School Librarian Preparation Standards, the majority, you'll note 87%, selected very well and mostly, with 6% selecting partially. 7% selected not at all. This is quite ironic, as these standards are a direct adoption of the 2019 AASL standards. Here, when asked about the extent that the proposed standard represent what well-prepared school librarians need to know and be able to do, a significant majority, 82%, selected very well or mostly, affirming that the proposed standards address the critical role of school librarians as teachers of literacy and information science. 9% selected partially, and another 9% selected not at all. Major themes. The public comment survey provided multiple opportunities for respondents' comment on specific standards. The completed surveys generated 78 unique comments. These were analyzed and coded, producing 5 distinct themes, 3 of which, 82%, were varying forms of support for the proposed preparation standards. As you see listed here, the largest group are support with specific praise, then support coupled with concerns about implementation, both of which we will come back to in upcoming slides. The third group of support comments provided minor language changes to further strengthen the standards. This is also detailed in an upcoming slide. The smallest group, looking at the bottom row, are 3 comments of criticism, none of which is directly associated with the school librarian preparation standards. The group in the third row, where you see 14%, these comments are either about the standard set overall or general observation on concepts within the standards. For example, one commenter expressed skepticism about school librarians' knowledge of library science. This skepticism of library and school staff's qualifications is in part related to the concerns that respondents shared about the current state of school libraries, limited programming, and greater limitations in staffing, which we will be discussing in our concluding slides. A handful of comments dealt with the parents' role as to what is taught to their children and or concerns with age appropriateness of materials. It's important to emphasize these school librarian prep standards don't stand alone. This brings us to the crux of the work that has been underway by the Office of Educator Excellence for elevating the quality of teacher preparation. Doing this through the focused grade level bands, development of relevant disciplinary literacy preparation standards, which are paired with professional knowledge and skill standards, and statewide adopted core teaching practices, each of which is grounded in the responsive teaching practices that call for authentic parent engagement. If you're experiencing deja vu, I will confirm, you saw this graphic during the disciplinary literacy standards presentation in March. The school librarian preparation standards are complemented and reinforced by the professional knowledge and skills standards, the disciplinary literacy standards, and core teaching practices, each of which underpins the value of intentional engagement of families and communities in development of curricula and school library collections. Certified school librarians are teachers with training in learner development and age appropriateness of pedagogy and instructional materials. They are prepared to employ culturally responsive practices for engaging families, communities, students, colleagues, and school and district leadership to build school library collections that accurately reflect diverse experiences of the learning communities that they serve. In concert with the professional knowledge and skills standards and guidance provided by the MDE, for example, the collections guideline memo that was released last April, the proposed standards provide the framework for preparing school librarian candidates to fulfill their roles as teachers, leaders, instructional partners, information specialists, and program administrators. University preparation programs need updated relevant standards to ensure school librarian candidates fulfill the multiplicity of roles they have. Among them is the most important responsibility of effectively contributing to establishing district board approved policies and implementing these policies across the various library program services. I'm going to go back to the 3 comments I referred to earlier that were not directly associated with the standards. One, coincidentally, was brought up during our first meeting in presenting these proposed standards. It was addressed by our colleagues from the Michigan Library. But for emphasis today, the comment on removing this statute does not fall within the scope of these preparation standards. We can reiterate that school librarians and teachers alike do not have a blanket exemption and are bound by the Michigan Code of Educational Ethics, as well as the board-approved selection policies. For instance, the statutory exemption would not protect a librarian or teacher acting outside of the scope of their duties, or if they were disseminating material legally determined to be obscene under the Miller test. Earlier, I mentioned the 2 language changes recommended for strengthening the standards. Here they are. Note, multiple commenters emphasize the importance of highlighting that librarians are teachers first. Thus, the word educators was replaced with teachers. A commenter highlighted the reference of trends in children's and young adult literature in the current library standards. Thus, the committee addressed this by adding the word current just before the statement that refers to this requirement in the reading engagement component of Standard 3. Again, earlier I shared that the largest group of comments were in support of the standards. You'd like to know what people specifically liked about the standards. Well, these were looked into further. 4 themes emerged. The size of the bubble in this visual indicates the frequency of comments for that respective theme. The greatest number, the yellow bubble, conveys commenters' praise of standards focus on developmentally appropriate, equitable access to information literacy. Next, the theme emerge rigorous expectations for well-prepared school librarians. Another group expressed that their readiness for updating the current standards, as if saying it's about time. And several also praised the standards alignment to current national standards. A significant group of the support comments, specifically 28%, were those that expressed concerns for implementation of the school librarians' training and validation for their professional roles. District and level leadership must recognize the value of school libraries, staffed with certified school librarians, as this directly impacts the quality of school library programming. While these concerns are beyond the scope of the preparation standards, we will collaborate with the field to provide companion resources to support educator preparation providers' implementation of the standards and to support school leaders' valuation of school libraries and school librarians' advocacy for high-quality school library programs. Next steps, pending your approval, for fall of 2024 to spring 2025, we will be offering technical assistance for the educator preparation providers, EPPs, so that they can begin program revisions. In spring to summer of 2025, the program revisions will be submitted through applications and reviewed. And the expectation is that in fall of 2025, EPPs can begin offering revised school librarian preparation programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, presenters. Board members, questions?
Great job.
Thank you very much. Not a question, but always appreciated. Sunshine is always appreciated, particularly on a board day. Dr. Pritchett, Ms. Lipton.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we know about how many universities in the state offer library sciences as a degree?
We know it's sort of in reverse. There's one university that offers a school librarian preparation program, that's Wayne State. But most of our other regional and comprehensive universities, our ones, have library science programs. So University of Michigan, for example, has a big, robust library science program. They closed their school librarian program about right when I came to the department about 10 years ago, because of lack of interest in that. What we're hoping with these new standards is that we can inspire more of our existing institutions that have library science programs to develop a track for school librarians. That by bringing attention to it, so like bringing sunshine to the issue of the shortages in school librarians.
So if I'm an individual anywhere in the state of Michigan, if I want to become a certified librarian, I would have to do that through Wayne State at this point.
Correct. If we have an allowance with a few of our alternative routes for individuals who have degrees in master's degrees in library and information science, who are working in public libraries or the Library of Michigan, to get an expedited program that focuses just on school librarianship, and they can get a certificate with just that. But barring that, yes, the Wayne State or unfortunately out-of-state programs that are more than willing to take our tuition money and do preparation. And I'm not saying they do a bad job, because they do a very good job. But we'd like to keep that in-house.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Lipton.
In the interim, as these new standards are being implemented and then fully rolled out, are there any, how do you foresee dealing with students that are already in a program? Will there be some sort of grandfathering or some sort of update so that they can signal to a potential employer that they're under the new standards, or have you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we work with our providers, in this case our provider, to ensure that anybody who's currently in stream and being prepared is able to graduate and get their credential. These being national standards, and we know that Wayne State is ahead of the game in terms of addressing, keeping up with national standards for their programs, there should be no issues for our in-stream candidates to be able to have this credential.
Mr. McMillan. Thank you, Ms. Lipton.
So if a district or a school wants to, or a district wants to hire a person to manage the library but don't want to call them a librarian, I mean, these standards are, first of all, voluntary, right? I mean, they're not forbidden from hiring somebody to work in the library, to oversee a library, if they don't pass a test based on these standards, right?
In very, very limited contexts. So we've released guidance in the past on when we have an endorsement for a particular field like math, the district is obligated to hire somebody who has that math endorsement to be a math teacher. There are different models of school libraries across the state, some of which have a fully credentialed school librarian, full-time, always there, making sure that things work. That's sort of our gold standard. But we also have schools in which certified teachers who are working in the library with a library aide. For example, the Grant Middle School that was recently highlighted in a press release, they operate their library with a library aide who's not a credentialed school librarian, and a classroom teacher is trained in language arts. So they pair that. We believe the school library is a classroom, and it should be staffed in the way you would staff any classroom with a properly certified individual. Knowing that there's a shortage, though, we know that schools have some other staffing arrangements. We'd like to move them toward having that library with that credential librarian.
Somebody that isn't indoctrinated can still be called a library aide and still oversee the library.
Individual without a certification could be considered a library aide.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any other questions or comments from board members? Ms. Snyder.
Are we able to amend the standards right now and add something to it? Is that possible? Can I present that motion?
Well, we can move the standards. We can second the standards. Once we get the standards, then you can move an amendment associated therewith.
Very
Yes.
good.
So if there's no further discussion, if we could have a motion to move the standards as presented. So that was a jump ball. Moved by Senator Bullock, seconded by Ms. Lipton, to move the proposed standards. We're now in discussion. Ms. Snyder, to you for your motion to amend.
I move to amend page 4 of the standards, 4.3, at the end of that sentence, add a comma. And I'll read the full sentence. Give me a second. 4.3 currently states evidence-based decision-making. Well-prepared school librarians make effective use of data and information to assess how practice and policy impact groups and individuals in their diverse learning communities. I would add a comma. This is the movement to amend. While respecting the constitutional and legal rights of parents as the primary decision makers on how information is managed and used to educate their child or children.
Support.
So we have a motion to amend. We have from Ms. Snyder, second by Mr. McMillan. Do we have any discussion associated with the proposed amendment?
Can that be stated again?
Please. Thank you.
Comma, while respecting the constitutional and legal rights of parents as the primary decision makers on how information is managed and used to educate their child or children.
Okay. People want to hear it again or not? People feel they have it? Sometimes we're visual learners. We see it better than we hear it. Okay? Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's important to, in these standards, make it clear that librarians need to respect the parental rights of parents. I don't see that anywhere, and I think that it would be helpful to at least affirm that in the standards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to offer a specific amendment, that's fine. Right now, we're dealing with a particular amendment that I believe encompasses what you just
Yeah,
said.
no,
Is that
that's
right?
why I'm saying I
Okay,
support it.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have a motion to amend. We have a second to amend. We've had discussion. Hearing no additional discussion, seeing no additional interest in discussion. Dr. Pugh?
I would like to hear from the presenter, your thoughts on that, and if there is no other space where we talk about how parents are engaged in their children's access to books.
Sure, I can go back to what was shared earlier, specifically in that these standards do not stand alone. They are to work in concert with the professional knowledge and skill standards. And most importantly, when we're talking about parent rights as well as student rights, we have the Michigan Code of Educational Ethics that upholds not only the students' rights to their education, but also the parents' involvement in their child's education. Parents have the right to choose for their child, and these are decisions that are made at the local level as provided in the example guidance that was shared as an example by MDE, as provided in the preparation for school librarians to be those collaborators. The standards themselves speak to how the candidate is prepared to take on those roles, and bringing together the librarian preparation standards, the core teaching practices, the professional knowledge and skills standards, all of which are rooted in responsive practices that authentically engage families and communities in making decisions, in abiding by the local set of policies. So these standards themselves are a framework that work together with the other named standards. They are not standalone. And the suggestions that were brought up, as soon as I heard them, I could see visually where they are in the other standards and how they would be together.
And I would add that I would consider that a friendly amendment, and it is certainly in the spirit of the standards. There's nothing to that violates the guiding vision behind these standards. It's right in line with what we have, and in fact, the standards have a lot of implementation resources published by AASL, which again lift up the parents' right and families' rights. So,
Just two more questions. So it's redundancy or just reiterating what is already there? I mean, it's okay with reiterating. I don't, that's what you're saying. It's reiterating the premise of.
yeah, and we have intentional redundancy built into some of our standard sets that currently exist too, so.
And then my other question, I just want to make sure that I heard the language correctly. I mean, but you've pretty much answered it. But to Board Member Snyder, you're saying that a parent has the right for their own child, not books in general in the schools, in the library.
So I'm just literally stating that while respecting the constitutional and legal rights of parents as the primary decision makers, just noting that they are the primary decision makers on how information is managed and used to educate their child. And
Their child, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend. We have a second. Any other discussion? Please.
I just have a question. If standards get amended, do they go back for public comment? I mean, I'm just curious as to procedurally, if a standard that's already been out for public comment goes to us for approval and then it gets amended by us, what does that do to the timeline of your implementation, or does
Well,
it affect it?
It's actually never happened before. I mean, we consider this conversation and this deliberation part of the democratic process that, you know, generated the standards. We consider each of you as important stakeholders as our public and our public comment that has come in. And it's not out of line with some of the comments that came through that expressed desire for understanding parental authority, but didn't offer that specific language. So unless Dr. Rice would want us to take it back out to public comment for that amendment, we would not see that that would be necessary.
I mean, I'm not an expert in administrative law. There are times when amendments do require you to go out for public comment, so it may be something to look at.
Particularly if they're substantive amendments or if they're perceived to be substantive amendments. Senator.
Well, I was going to.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, I don't totally disagree, but in this case, the amendment itself by Member Snyder isn't, I'll use the word, a fundamental change. It's just adding something that already exists from somewhere else, basically. So it's just, she's just adding or she's reaffirming that parents have the rights to their child. So it's not a fundamental change. I don't think that it would necessarily have to go, unless there was something fundamentally changed, then that's the course of action, so.
So Ms. Snyder, if you would be kind enough to reread your amendment, please.
Sure. At the end of 4.3, comma, instead of period, while respecting the constitutional and legal rights of parents as the primary decision makers on how information is managed and used to educate their child or children.
Okay. So, so we have an amendment. It was not offered per se as a friendly amendment. Are you suggesting that it is from the perspective of the person who offered the main motion? If you accept it as a friendly amendment, and if the seconder accepted, I thought you
Oh, I
moved
did,
it.
I did.
Well, there you go.
I did, I'm sorry.
So we are back to you. You moved it. You have to decide if you
I
perceive it to be
accept
friendly. Okay.
Member Snyder's motion.
As
or
a friendly amendment. So as the seconder, Ms. Lipton, do you accept it as a friendly amendment or not? If you do, it is incorporated in, as if in the body of the base resolution for our, or base standards for our vote. If you do not, there'll be a separate roll call vote associated therewith.
I have some reservations, just legal reservations.
Fair enough. Okay,
So-
and you have some experience with the law.
I do.
Yeah, okay, all right, very good. Okay, so it is not accepted by both the mover and the seconder of the base
amendment.
motion. So we are back to a roll call vote on the amendment to the base resolution. Ms. Evans, this is a roll call vote on Ms. Snyder's amendment.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
No.
McMillan.
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So we have I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan.
So I have an amendment. It could be three, but I'll just make it one so it's simpler.
But where?
It is on page 2, 1.4, talks about learning environments. The learning environments, the last sentence, it's an amendment. The learning environments encourage positive, oh, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. It's the first sentence. Learning environments, 1.4, well-prepared school librarians create both physical and virtual learner-centered environments that are engaging and equitable. My amendment would be that are engaging, comma, free from age-inappropriate material, and equitable. My second portion of this one amendment is on page 3, 3.1 at the very end, the last sentence on reading engagement. Well-prepared school librarians use strategies to foster learner motivation to read for learning, comma, personal growth and enjoyment. I would add a comma, free from age-inappropriate materials. And then finally on page 4, 4.1, access. Well-prepared school librarians facilitate and advocate for flexible, open access to library resources and services according to the ethical codes of the profession, period. I would add, instead of the period, and ensure the resources are free from age-inappropriate material.
What was the last one? What section?
4.1 on page 4.
So moved.
So you don't by any chance have that in writing for board members?
No, I mean, I can say it again. It's probably less words than this previous amendment when you look at them all. It's just, the addition is free from age-inappropriate material, free from age-inappropriate material, and ensure the resources are free from age-inappropriate material. So I don't, it's kind of clear.
The proposed addition is clear. Where it links up to is less so. Tell us where again. I heard
Yeah.
the access piece under 4.
Okay, 1.4 on page 2, it's in the middle of the first sentence. Well-prepared school librarians create both physical and virtual learner-centered environments that are engaging, comma, free from age-inappropriate material, and equitable.
What does that mean?
That the environment that these are in are free from age-inappropriate material.
We have a question about whether we're able to project this text.
What does project the text mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
project
Oh.
on the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
People want to see
Oh, okay.
what you're saying.
Our
Oh.
services.
Oh, see
not
the
good.
standards.
Yeah,
I see.
I can't get to.
I see.
Board, we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to make copies of the standards for people so that they are able to see Mr. McMillan's proposed amendment.
This is what I just want to be the same. What is that though? Just redundancy? Because they're both playing at, they're dipping their toe into the,
There's a, so there's degree of redundancy. So,
hers I get. He's
But it's making noises, but like it's completely black.
book back. I know where he's trying to
Yeah.
start out
Had you.
slippery slope.
yeah. I hear you. No, I mean,
I probably won't send that amendment anyway.
it's in line with what is in the other, the other standards that talk about understanding the appropriateness of things. Now, say it in here, so the way that the current, the way that, that's just fine. The way the current school librarian endorsement is established is it sits on top of the teaching certificate, so you're prepared in all of these standards, like all of that set of standards.
So I go to my
However, you do have
laptop,
programs
which is
where an individual may not get all
high
of
school
those sets of
laptop. She's now
standards, so they may not get
Oh,
all
wow.
of that
Okay, so
in, say, an elementary
I do
teacher
know what
preparation program. They're just being prepared in the school librarian standards.
It's basically like,
And so
it's
some
fried.
of that
Like,
content may
it
not.
just fried. So I
Yeah, I
was
don't
like,
know what I would
They may
do
not
oh,
catch that. It's not
well, exactly.
out of
So I said to my husband,
with what's here.
and he had ended the conversation by saying, oh, don't forget, there's a lot of construction.
I get it.
Yeah,
I understand.
and you never
So
can
what
tell.
happens is,
I,
Because last,
question
you
two,
just never can tell.
this is what happened. So I left my house
she's
at
going back to the
7:30,
Oxford.
which I said, okay, 2 hours. So I'm driving, and for some reason, I don't know if there was a detour to get onto.
Have a handwritten copy, not a hand, but a physical copy.
Free of inappropriate, I would argue that reiteration of age appropriate, not age appropriate. Inappropriate, I would use negation. That would be in line with language.
We're back in session. So, Mr. McMillan, if I could summarize. You propose amended language in 1.4, 3.1, and 4.1.
Yes, sir.
And the amended language is the same in all three cases.
Essentially, exactly in the first two and essentially in the third one.
And that is your handwriting, free from age inappropriate material.
Oh, you actually got it.
It was close.
I didn't have anything else, yeah.
Okay, I thought you were just typing it.
No.
I just want to make sure that it's faithful because
Yes, that is
people are
exactly
voting,
what it
people are
is.
voting on it. So free from age inappropriate material under 1.4, free from age inappropriate materials in 3.1, and in 4.3, 4.1 rather, and ensure the resources are free from age inappropriate material. Okay. So we have, I beg your pardon?
The 4.3 and the
Yeah, we're not
5.3
doing
are
those.
not included.
No.
So we can strike those.
So we have three elements that are woven into one amendment. So we have a proposed amendment. Do we have a second to the proposed amendment?
Is this another friendly amendment that I'm taking?
Well, it's nothing until somebody seconds it.
Okay.
Didn't you already second it?
So we have a second by Ms. Snyder. If you would like to consider it, Senator, as a friendly amendment, that's fine.
Absolutely.
So we have a yes to a friendly amendment. Ms. Lipton, do you accept these as friendly amendments?
I have reservations about these as being duplicative of what's already in the standards and what's already been sent out for public comment.
Fair enough. Okay, so, so the answer is no to the acceptance of a friendly amendment. So we're going to do a roll call vote on the amendment, please. Ms. Evans?
Bullock?
No.
Lipton?
I'm sorry, the acceptance?
So, no, so this is for the amendments, the three amendments that Mr. McMillan put forward.
No.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
No.
Pugh?
No.
Robinson? Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion fails.
Okay. And now we are at the point of voting on the standards as amended.
It failed 4-4, right?
I beg your pardon?
Usually you announce how it failed. Is it 4-4?
5-3. 3-5. 3 yes.
Okay. Oh, I thought you said, did you say?
No, I
Bullock,
accepted the
Lipton.
amendment, but I voted no.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. So we are now voting for the standards with the small amendment. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
I'm sorry, I need clarification.
We are voting on the standards, the proposed standards as amended,
As amended with Ms. Snyder's.
which was already voted,
Right.
to be incorporated
Thank you.
therein.
I'm trying to follow the thread. Yes.
Understood. You're not the only one.
Yes.
Okay.
Pugh? Yes. Robinson? Yes. Snyder? And Tilly? Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on today's, thank you, presenters. The next item on today's agenda is a presentation on the approval of the nominations to the Special Education Advisory Committee. Each year, the State Board of Education is asked to approve nominations to SEAC. SEAC is seeking to fill the following vacancies: 7 delegates, 8 alternates, and 6 member-at-large members due to expired or incomplete terms. There are a total of 21 vacancies. We welcome our question answerers. Dr. Michelle Harmala, backed by popular demand, Ms. Terry Rink, Director of the Office of Special Education, and Ms. Terry Pettit, SEAC Facilitator in the Office of Special Education. Board, there is no presentation for these, but there is an opportunity to ask questions. You've received materials associated with these 21 recommendations. are there any questions? Actually, let's start with a motion. Let's get a motion on the floor. Do I have a motion to move the 21 nominations? So, okay, we have a motion by Dr. Pugh. We have a second by Dr. Pritchett. We're now into Q&A. Please, Ms. Snyder.
So right now, the U.S. Department of Education has a case open through the Office of Civil Rights. We're being sued for special education not providing an adequate education to special education students here in Michigan. Have any of the people who wish to be nominated to SEAC spoken about that? Do they have any comments on it?
They do not address SEAC in that way.
Okay. So in the information we gave them to, provide their bio and information, nobody has remarked on that? Okay. All right.
Well,
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan.
I guess to that, I mean, this is the Special Education Advisory Committee. And Michigan is, it's relatively unprecedented, as I understand it, that it is having to defend that they did not have access. The accusation, as I understand it, is there was not access, particularly during COVID, for special education students. This seems like a pretty important matter that an advisory committee committee candidates ought to let us know where they stand on this matter. Again, I could be wrong, but as I understand it, this is relatively unprecedented and pretty substantial. I know it's in the early phases of the litigation, but it does seem like something that we should ask them, particularly given that this is a special education advisory committee. So I'll be passing until I can understand where they stand on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. McMillan. Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote on the 21 nominees.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Pass.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly? Motion carries.
Very much, board. Thank you very much, responders. Time is now 11:56 p.m. And because I beg your pardon. And because I am, thank you very much, Ms. Snyder, because I am nothing but driven, we're going to knock off a little bit of the afternoon's agenda. Could I have an approval of the confirmation of the closed session of April 9th, 2024? Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Do I have a second associated therewith? Dr. Robinson is the second. Any discussion? If not, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
I want to make sure you're certain that we don't need minutes. I know that it couldn't be public, but.
I am certain.
Okay.
We have had the conversation with the AG's office.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And the April 9th meeting is regarding
A closed session.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of May 14th, 2024? Dr. Robinson, do I have a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan? Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Board. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the work session of May 21st, 2024? Moved by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Senator Bullock. Any discussion associated therewith? Ms. Lipton?
I just have a question.
Yes,
I was not in attendance at that work session.
right.
Do I still vote on approval of the minutes?
I think
or-
it would be more appropriate if you abstained from those.
That's what I- thank you.
There's nothing that requires you to abstain, but you weren't there, it's hard to argue that the minutes are faithful to what took place.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please, Ms. Snyder.
My argument against continuing to vote on minutes of open meetings that are videotaped, of which the government should be accountable to making sure that the public always has access to, is that the minutes then become an interpretation of what is being said at times. And so my pass is associated with that.
Fair enough.
Wait.
Please.
Actually, and maybe I didn't mention this, I mean, I watched the whole video of it. Even though I wasn't present, I did watch the whole video of it. I think the local TV station or somebody made a video. It was sent to me and I watched.
WWMT
Yeah.
made a video of it. It is available online in its entirety, you
Yeah.
bet.
So I watched the whole thing, so I feel that I can vote yes, actually.
You can vote yes, you can vote
No, I know.
no, you
That's-
can
that's-
abstain.
No, I know, but I mean,
There's nothing in
I'm
Robert's
confident
Rules
that-
of Order that constrain you in any way.
Exactly, but I'm
Yeah.
confident that I feel that the minutes accurately reflect what happened.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. If we don't have any more discussion, if we could have a roll call vote on the minutes of the work session, May 21st, 2024.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Abstain?
McMillan,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Pass.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And for the listening public, a pass is an abstention for all intents and purposes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Legislative Committee meeting of June 3rd, 2024? Moved by Dr. Robinson, who's on a roll, no lobster intended, seconded by Dr. Pritchett. Is there any discussion associated therewith? Hearing none, if we could have a
Actually,
roll.
just to confirm, it
Please.
is recorded, correct? And available to the public?
It is recorded, yes. Hearing no discussion, if we could have a roll call vote, please?
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh, Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, Board. It is 12:01. State Board of Education Committee of the Whole will stand adjourned for lunch. We'll reconvene the regular meeting of the State Board of Education at 1 p.m. We stand adjourned.